belonging. In times of mass population movements due to war, climate change, and rising economic inequality, belonging is becoming a key concept for all societies. Where is my... Belonging as well as unbelonging are ever more prominent aspects of today's divided societies, and ones that we as early childhood educators and the EECERA community needs to consider. Early childhood education plays a crucial role in breaking societal divisions by providing opportunities for diverse children to live together and experience belonging in their preschools. That role has been recognized by the early childhood education communities as evident in the centrality and visibility of belonging in early childhood education frameworks the world over. Even so, not all young children's need to belong is being met. We need to do much better. Belonging has been identified as a fundamental human need, important for young children's well-being, learning, agency, identity, and ability to sense their own potentiality and capacity. Belonging is also seen as an important factor in how young children perceive others and respond to differences. In this presentation, I will discuss possible ways to understand and describe children's belonging, consider the plausibility of integrating children's perspectives into research on belonging in early childhood education, and provide examples of how children perceive and experience belonging in early childhood education settings, built on a recent study on children's belonging. Belonging has been explored and analyzed by several researchers within different fields of study, such as psychology, anthropology, sociology, and education. So varied perspectives have been conceptualized. Belonging has been seen as a fundamental human need that is universally present in human life from early years on. Researchers have also drawn attention to belonging in terms of an individual sense of being connected with other people and places and of feeling at home. Other researchers have called for going beyond the individualistic view of belonging and approach belonging as a process through which individuals are seen as belonging to a particular social group, differentiated from other social groups. Still, other scholars have drawn attention to belonging as a political matter. So in order to belong, one has to be accepted by others in the community and in the society. Ewell Davis maintained that the politics of belonging is always about who is inside and who is outside the imaginary border. She claims that belonging involves not only construction of boundaries, but also inclusion or exclusion of particular people, categories, and groupings within these boundaries by those who have the power to do this. Soto Manning has, from a critical race theory, looked at the relationship between belonging and immigrant children of color. She problematizes the neutrality of the concept of belonging and asserts that racialized children and families are routinely denied belonging through the process of assimilation, erasure, and suppression. So, reviewing these varied perspectives on belonging, we can conclude that belonging is complex and deeply emotional concept. It is a dynamic process that is not something that is achieved once and for all. And it's not a competency to be achieved by the child. It is the responsibility of us as educators to ensure that all children belong. Recently, I participated in a research project together with colleagues from 5 European countries. The project was called Politics of Belonging, Promoting Children's Inclusion in Educational Settings Across Borders. It was a multidisciplinary and cross-cultural project and was conducted with financial support from Norforsk. So here are the participating universities. The aim of the project was to promote children's inclusion in early childhood settings. The focus was on every child's right to a sense of belonging in early childhood institutions and being valued equally and with respect. The research project explored belonging from different angles. We focused on belonging from the perspectives of parents, educators, and children. But my focus here today is on children's perspectives and experiences of belonging in their early childhood institution. And that part of the study was guided by theories of belonging as well as critical childhood studies. This is the conceptual framework of the study. The study is located between theories of belonging and critical childhood studies. We found Ewell Davis's theory useful to understand and analyze our data. We also found other theories which understand belonging in terms of an individual's sense of being connected with other people and places a feeling of home, useful for understanding children's belonging, as well as Soto Manning's perspective of the racialization of belonging. Then we come to the question, how can we integrate children's perspective into research on belonging in early childhood education? There we relied on childhood studies and previous studies on research with young children. Childhood studies regard children as contributing members of society, experts on their own lives, and holding opinions that should be heard and considered. Researchers talk about research with children instead of research on children, and emphasis is placed on learning from children. The literature concerning participatory research with children has identified several challenges in relational ethics, such as inequalities of power between children and adult researchers, how to seek children's assent in research, and ensure that they can understand that they can opt out of the study, as well as children's right to protection and confidentiality. Childhood studies is a research field in progress, and in recent years, researchers have been considering and scrutinizing past experiencing and research practices. New theories and new ideas have emerged, ideas that challenge questions, taking for granted ideas and truths. These critical studies have emphasized additional challenges in research with children, such as what children are we inviting to participate in research? Who are the children that we are listening to? Is it the children who have the largest voices? Those who speak the community language? How do we reach out to a diverse group of children in order to represent the multiplicity of their voices? Since children's experiences and perspectives are likely to vary considerably. Interdependency is another important concept. Childhood is viewed as a social construction dependent upon culture, time, and context. Research with children built on the view of children as members of many social settings, where they use their strength and competencies to actively influence the surroundings while the environment influences them. Therefore, emphasis is placed on the interdependence of children's voices and the social cultural context in which they live and develop. Relational materialistic perspective encourages researchers and practitioners to look more carefully at the role that the non-human elements, such as objects, other organisms, and the environment play. The relationship between young children and their material environment have been brought more to the center. The Oxford Dictionary defines intersectionality as the network of connections between social categories such as race, class, and gender, especially when this may result in additional disadvantage or discrimination. An awareness of intersectionality can allow us to better understand our unconscious prejudice. And because how different children's lives are, these differences can cause both discrimination and create privilege for others. An intersectional lens would start from observation of the differences that exist between children. And finally, who is interpreting children's voices? Contradictions can arise when adults step into children's world and attempt to speak on their behalf. In that regard, the researcher has both choice and power. She has the power to decide what is included and what's not. She informs and presents the findings and decides when she does and when she does not, and how. The construction of the child in research is influenced by the researcher's fundamental beliefs in which guide her actions. The study Politics of Belonging, Promoting Children's Inclusion in Educational Settings Across Border, focused on children's belonging in early childhood settings. We wanted to listen to a multiplicity of voices, so the participants were diverse groups of children in early childhood settings. The examples that I will present are mainly taken from the Icelandic part of the study. Iceland was for centuries a homogeneous and somewhat isolated society, and only in the last decades the population of Iceland has changed significantly and become more diverse in terms of background, culture, and home language. Preschools in Iceland have indeed witnessed a considerable increase in the numbers of children from diverse backgrounds in a very short period of time. And in Iceland, we have an inclusive educational policy focusing on education for all children. The participating children were aged 5 and 6. They were the oldest preschool children in the last year of preschool. After consent was obtained from gatekeepers, the children were informed about what participating in the study might entail, as well as the right to withdraw from the research at any or no reason. We introduced the study to the children using an informational leaflet that portrayed the study in pictures and contained short text clarifying what the study would involve. Pseudonyms are used to protect the children's anonymity. We tried to reduce the power difference between children and the researcher by conducting the study in the preschool context, which was a familiar environment for the children. Moreover, when selecting preschool to participate in the national study in Iceland, we chose 2 preschools with high proportion of children from diverse cultural and linguistic backgrounds. Doing so enabled us to hear a multiplicity of voices and to assess the intersectional experience of children. In line with our paradigm and the conceptual framework, measures were taken to address the barriers preventing active participation of children with diverse cultural and linguistic backgrounds. Therefore, methods were chosen that allowed for varied means of communication to gain better understanding of the children's views of belonging to the preschool. We used mainly participant observation photo illustration, and walking interviews. Involving the integration of photographs into the research discussions was combined with walking interviews. After periods of participant observation in the preschools, the researchers invited the children individually to go on a walking tour and show her whatever was important to them in preschool and to take pictures with a tablet computer. Inviting the children to lead and direct the tour provided them with some authority and control over the situation. The children, they walked around with the researcher. They freely took pictures and pointed out things and raised issues that were discussed. Since the concept of belonging is complex, we did not make assumptions or guiding questions about belonging, but more let the children lead the encounter and wandering in the preschool setting. The conversations were conducted around the photos either during the walking tours or afterwards when the child and the researcher went through the photos together. The tablet computers were seen as a tool for the children to communicate, providing them with visual voice, while the photos served as a stimulus for further communication. The children could choose what they photographed and how and when they communicated with the researcher. We saw the walking interviews as an attempt to disrupt the power imbalance between the child and the researcher. By using photos which the children themselves took, the children led the conversation with the researcher. I will now present the main findings of the study and how we as adult researchers understood and interpreted the children's narratives of the conditions for belonging in their early childhood institutions. Various factors have been found to influence children's belonging in educational settings. When researching with the children in the 5 countries, we found one of the main themes expressed as important by the children was good relationship with the other children and being able to participate in play with them. So, belonging appeared to be strongly related to friendship and participation. For all the children, being able to participate and being included in activities with other children were important conditions for belonging. So the feeling at home and sense of being connected with other people in the preschool community was of utmost importance. The politics of belonging refers to how belonging operates between people and their environments, and includes both belonging and non-belonging. The fundamental need, however, to belong can also result in rejection of others. It was most painful for the children in our study who were not accepted by the group and did not have friends to play with. The children were aware of the preschool rule not to exclude children in the preschool setting. Inclusion was encouraged. They showed caring and empathy toward each other and sympathized with children that were somehow left out. But even though there was a basic assumption that everyone should join the play, many children described experiences of exclusion, and they seemed to be very much aware of how difficult it was for a child to be excluded from the group. And many of the children stated explicitly how difficult it was if someone was excluded and not allowed to participate in play. And here is one example. Harald explained that sometimes children were excluded from play, and if that happened, the others tried to be nice to them and comfort them. He gave an example of Daniel when he was excluded and made fun of. And he was asked, how do you think Daniel felt then? Harald responded, not well. He started to cry. He said everyone was bad in preschool except for me and Adam. And what can you do when someone feels so unhappy, he was asked. You console him. And how do you do that? I console him by saying something and hug him somehow. Despite solidarity and empathy among the children who participate in the study, they often challenge the rules and use different, sometimes hidden strategies to exclude other children from their play activities, even though the rule about including all was clear. An example from one of our studies illustrates how the children made up a new rule to protect their boundaries and exclude other children. The rule they made was, you need to own cats to be part of the play. Previous research has shown that experiencing belonging in early childhood settings can be more difficult for children who differ from their peers in some way. For instance, the difference can be in terms of culture, language, or ethnicity. Immigrant children sometimes experience themselves as being incompetent participants in their preschool communities. Various studies with children of minority cultural backgrounds have described the difficulties that they are experiencing in becoming part of the community of their schools. When the children in the Icelandic study took the walking tours with the researcher, they took many photos of other children and talked about their many friends and discussed their relationship with other children. But when we examined the data further and looked closer, it became evident that the children had different relationships with these friends. There were friends, and then there were best friends. When they talked about their best friend, ethnic identity was identified as an important factor, and power relations were revealed. Then the group was split into two: native Icelandic-speaking children and children with home language other than Icelandic. So the children with non-dominant background were seen as belonging to another social group and differentiated from the other social group with the children with the dominant background. we found that children with minority cultural background seemed to have less choice of playmates and were more frequently excluded from the play than their Icelandic peers. The children with dominant Icelandic background were in more powerful position in the play. In an observation, Almar, a boy with a dominant background, took control of the play, but he invited Diana with a non-dominant background to play the cat. The children with dominant background also had more choices. They could play with children with dominant background as well as children with non-dominant background. And they also had more resources when they were excluded from the play than children with foreign background. They were able to use the community language to express their feeling. Time was also an issue. The children with Icelandic background had in most cases been in preschool for a longer time. They knew the preschool better, although there were exceptions. And here is an example of Alexander, who had been attending the preschool since he was a toddler. When he went on the walking tour with the researcher, he wanted to show her different places in the preschool. He went down the stairs and the researcher asked, "What is down there? I have never been there." Alexander responded confidently, "I have been there many times." Alexander took photographs of a door to a classroom he used to attend and said, "Okay, I want to take a photo of that because it was so much fun being there. All the 4-year-old children were there." And he continued walking confidently around the preschool, taking photos of all the familiar places that he knew so well. The children who had attended the preschool since they were toddlers and were fluent in the Icelandic language were competent and secure in the preschool environment. The children who had shorter history in the preschool and did not share the dominant language were not as confident. It has been pointed out that belonging of some children can generate exclusion of other children and will mostly affect children in vulnerable position. This can, for instance, occur when good relations have been formed among children who have a strong position in the peer group and have neither need for nor advantage of taking other children in. And here is an example. Adam, with non-dominant background, did not always feel good in preschool and said that sometimes he would prefer to stay at home rather than come to preschool. Although he took many pictures of other children and explained that they were his friends because he played with them, he explained that not all the children in the preschool were friends. He also said that while he was often allowed to participate in play, other times he was excluded and not allowed to participate, as this example illustrates. When he was asked, "Are you always allowed to join?" Adam responded, "Not always. Sometimes they say, 'I cannot take part.' You cannot participate." Sometimes. "And how do you feel when you're not allowed to join the play?" "Not well." Ewell Davis underscores that to belong, one must be accepted by others in the community. In our study, we found that children who did not speak the community language and did not have the same cultural experience as other children were frequently denied belonging in the preschool. Critical race researchers like Sudo Manning would in this regard talk about racialization of belonging. Then we turn to the environment, the importance of the environment. It has been pointed out that belonging is shaped in relations between children and their environments in educational settings. Spiro, for instance, encourages us to look beyond the notion of the child as a centralized subject and open our analysis to explore children's multiple relationships and the connections between human and non-humans. Peter Moss discusses posthumanism and the posthuman child and talks about the welcome and inescapable interconnectedness of people, things, and ideas, and that everything around us affects everything else, which makes everything change and be in a continuous process of becoming. The importance of the material and the environment is well known from the Reggio Emilia pedagogy. They have called the environment the third teacher or the third pedagogue, with reference to its strong agency in learning. Space and material in the preschool have been found to be relevant factors of inclusion and exclusion, and having a powerful function in uniting and separating children. The physical and the social environment can facilitate or hinder children's participation and contribute to their overall sense of belonging. This is an important factor, not at least for children with special needs or non-dominant background. We found in our study that belonging was connected to the spaces and materiality of the preschools, as well as the rules in relation to how to use them. Children's non-human relations were clearly one part of constructing membership to the early childhood education setting. We observed children interacting with their preschool space and material, and through them expressing their belonging there. We documented play situations where the construction of belonging happened through children's actions and silent negotiations with objects and materials such as blocks and planks. A space where the hollow blocks were located was frequently expressed by the children as a place where they enjoyed participating in play with peers. Almar explained when he was asked, "Where are you when you feel good in preschool?" "In the hollow blocks. They are fun. I worship them. There you can build your own house." The hollow blocks were material they could use collectively and creatively. The hollow blocks was a space for agency, participation, and curiosity. A space where all the children could be included in the play, no matter what their background or how they prefer to communicate. They could play different roles and communicate in different ways. We also found that the children seemed to experience spaces and material in the educational setting, both as personal and as shared. When they walked around the preschools with the tablets, they often pointed the researchers their own positions and their own personal compartments in the clothing room, where they come in the morning with their parents and they keep their spare clothes and their artworks. These spaces and materials were part of constructing and explaining their belonging in the preschool community. They also represented a transitional space between home and the preschool. The compartments belonged to the preschool, but the content was their own. Design of the space and choice of material in early childhood settings reflects educators' ideas, values, and expectations, and directs children's actions and the pedagogical practice. We know that children, for instance, play differently in a room full of unit block and planks than in a room with tables and chairs, puzzles, and board games. Access to certain places and the use of various material are often controlled by the educators. Preschool settings emphasizing children's agency, participation, and curiosity would increase children's opportunity for experiencing belonging. Preschool settings where children have more influence on the design of the environment, more access to material, more opportunities to interact creatively with material, and more time to play. Then we come to the most important part, the role of the educators. Educational institutions are thought to have a crucial role to play in providing opportunities for children experiencing belonging. However, this does not happen automatically. Previous studies on children's belonging in preschool have illustrated the significance of educators in creating conditions for belonging in preschool communities, especially for children with minority backgrounds. In a survey with educators on belonging in Iceland, we found educators' positive perspectives to multicultural practices and inclusion. They expressed a willingness to promote belonging among all children and support children with diverse backgrounds and participation in play. However, in our observation and interviews in the two Icelandic preschools, we did not see these positive views realizing in practice. We found that the children played primarily with other children of similar cultural backgrounds and the educators did not seem to realize their importance in supporting children's belonging. The educators in these preschools did not seem to consider the importance they had, the impact they had on children's belonging. The children did not mention the educators when they were asked what they did if a child was excluded. Instead, the children seemed to rely on each other. Two boys, Daniel and Adam, discussed what they did if someone was chasing them. Daniel explained, "I go away from him." "You go away, but you do not go away from me," Adam said then. Daniel continued to say, "And then when I go away, he just chases me more and more. And can no one help you?" And then Adam responded, "Yes, I help," but he runs after him. When the findings were presented to the educators as a part of the study, they were neither surprised nor defensive. They saw it as important to support children's competence and independence. They explained that they worked according to the emphasis in the national curriculum and stress that they wanted the children to be independent, that is, to be able to take care of themselves and to play with peers by themselves without adult interference. The participating educators' views on the role in promoting belonging and supporting children with non-dominant backgrounds were that things would happen by themselves. From their perspectives, all the children were given the same opportunities. Their practices seem to be based on the ideology of equality rather than equity, meaning that all the children were treated in a similar way, provided with the same resources and opportunities, rather than recognizing that they do not all start from the same place and therefore adjustments are needed. I wondered about these results and thought that maybe this inconsistency between intentions and reality could be seen as tensions between, on the one hand, the Nordic preschool tradition, which emphasizes democratic practices, children's rights, independence and free play, and on the other hand, educators' role as a supporter and creator of social spaces, opportunities and experiences, and thereby supporting children's belonging. Both are good and beneficial. We have been celebrating Nordic early childhood education emphasis on democracy, free play, indoors and outdoors, children's independence and self-reliance. And those practices are indeed ideal for strengthening inclusion and belonging. Educators need to acknowledge their responsibility for supporting children's friendship and belonging, facilitating shared everyday context for children of different backgrounds, and creating mutually beneficial experiencing. Changes in social realities in the last decades has made it increasingly challenging for educators to promote all children's belonging. However, it is important that educators acknowledge the important role they play in supporting and promoting belonging of children. Implication for practice. What has the study taught us? The study has taught us that friendship, being accepted in the peer group, and being a member of the preschool community are important conditions for belonging. We have learned that immigrant children and children with non-dominant backgrounds have a fragile social position in their preschool settings. Children who have dominant backgrounds share common cultural values, language practices, and knowledge of play activities, which can lead to the exclusion of children with immigrant backgrounds. We have learned the importance of space and material in creating conditions for belonging. And it makes us ponder how we can create space and set up preschool settings together with the children to promote belonging for every child. We have learned that curriculum guidelines need to stress equity, fairness, and justice. But that is not enough, because we have learned that inclusive educational policy and ethnic diverse preschools do not guarantee that children will form friendship and experience belonging. The study has also taught us that educators are not always aware of their importance in creating conditions for belonging. We have learned that educators play a vital role in supporting children's belonging by providing opportunities for acquaintances and creating shared experiences. We have learned the importance that educators consider the influence of the material and the environment they create in early childhood institutions. By listening to children's multimodal ways of expressing themselves, educators can act on what they are expressing about their experiences of belonging and non-belonging. And finally, early childhood education plays a crucial role in breaking societal divisions by providing opportunities for diverse children to live together and experience belonging in their preschool. In increasingly diverse educational communities of today, the importance to promote all children's belonging is a challenge that educators encounter. Belonging does not simply happen and is not giving. Thank you for your attention.